Welcome to the Coast Podcast. I'm Emilie, a virtual assistant agency owner who left Amazon in 2019 to build my dream.
And I'm Whitney, a freelance writer and communications consultant who never felt at home in a cube farm.
We didn't see many people paving their own ways like we decided to, so we created this podcast to talk to others who were brave enough to pick a different path. Creatives, entrepreneurs, people doing their careers and their lives their way.
Join us as we learn from them, get inspired, and show you beautiful paths less traveled.
Not every road leads to the coast, but the ones that do come with a great view.
Hello and welcome back to the Coast. I'm Whitney Popa. I own a communications consultancy in Edmonds, Washington, right down the street from today's guest, Aishah Hammock, who is the CEO of the House of Dogs, spelled like Haus. We were just talking before we got on here of like how I'm so phonetic. So I'm like, it's German. It's Haus of Dogs, House of Dogs. But we Americans like to say house. So it is an adoption center for dogs, or I could be butchering that. But it's also like one of the first places in Washington, right? Like a cafe where like the original intention was that people could come in, like those cat cafes only for dogs, and come and pet dogs and be with them. And now it seems pretty focused on adoption and fostering. And if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen that I've gotten to experience one of the recent adoptees because my friend Sam fostered her, a really cute like Pyrenees mix, I think she was, named Trudy. And I've helped to host events with the House of Dogs, and they do so much good in the community. And so I'm really excited to talk to you, Aishah, about everything that you do, not only for our community, for dogs, and for humans, because let's face it, that's a huge part of why animals are so important in our lives. So we're here to give you the stage to talk about your business and how it came to be. And I know part of your origin story, but I'd love for you to just tell us everything that you want to.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Whitney. It's an honor to be here. So we started out as a dog cafe where people could make a reservation, come in, hang out with some dogs, grab a beverage, put in an application if they wanted to adopt the dog. And then 3 months of that, COVID happened. And so we had to close our doors. And when we reopened in December of 2020, after being closed for 9 months, we decided to keep the cafe aspect closed and focus solely on rescuing and adopting dogs. So that's what we've been doing since December 2020.
Okay, so I was right that it was a dog cafe.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any intention of reopening that, or is that even possible? I know there's probably like a lot of codes and things that you have to do something like that.
We definitely want to reopen, but it's closed indefinitely because it's very labor intensive and we're still recovering from the financial hit that we took due to COVID. So for now, we're focusing on adoptions, but in the future, who knows? Never say never.
Yeah. And what I've found about you that's really wild is that you are so hands-on with people. Even when we were like, my mom wanted a dog at one of your events and we were like, oh, would she be able to make this happen? But he was such a cutie that there was like already a person who was probably going to adopt him. But you were like, I will bring this other dog to your house. So how do you do that?
I think this being my baby, this being my company, it gives me certain liberties. There's very little red tape, if at all, to cut through. As an entrepreneur, you get to make quick decisions and you don't have to kind of consult, someone above you. So that helps a lot, right? Because if I see a potential family that's interested in the dog, why would I stand in the way of that dog getting adopted by an amazing family with an amazing home? I'm going to do everything I can to get the dog into that beautiful home. So whatever it takes, whether it's meeting somewhere. For instance, this past weekend, I drove down to Olympia to meet someone that lived in the south area of Western Washington, and it saved them 2 hours of commute, and the dog got adopted. So it's a win-win. So I definitely go the distance. Whatever that I can do to get a dog into a great home, I will do it.
I grew up in Olympia, so I get it. I know how far it is. That's wild. And you talk a lot about, and he just recently passed, the dog that started it all, right?
Yes. Well, the inspiration for this dog cafe, or the House of Dogs, is Castle. Castle was a dog that I rescued from a shelter in LA County back in 2011. So he's a senior dog now. And when I was there, it was an eye-opening experience, because prior to that day, I really had very little to zero knowledge about shelters or rescues. I just did not know. I grew up in a family that didn't have pets, so I wasn't familiar with that world. And when I went to the shelter and I saw all these dogs there crying, barking, whining, shaking, shivering, it just woke me up. And I just knew at that moment that someday I wanted to do more. And I guess that moment is now. But the House of Dogs, and you're right, it's pronounced Haus, but us big Americans, we just say the house, right? The House of Dogs is named after Haus, who's a dog that belonged to my former partner, and we had to euthanize him last Christmas. So that was really hard, because the one time I was out of town on vacation was the one day that he would leave this earth. And I named the House of Dogs after him.
And you know that that's a thing, right? Like the animals, they don't want to die in front of you. Yeah, well, I hope it brings you some comfort, because when our cat died, like my childhood cat, my last remaining animal, I grew up with 2 dogs, 2 cats, pretty much my whole life. When my dad got sick, we inherited my childhood cat. I was not supposed to have cats with my 3 roommates and all of our boyfriends in Queen Anne. She was so anxious from moving. She hated moving. And it was probably like her 5th move that she licked the hair off of her belly. And so she had this pink belly. She was this tabby cat. No, she was not. She was a tortoiseshell cat. And she was just always anxious. She spent all of her time in my room or licking the hair off her belly, or both. And she was getting pretty old. We moved her to our apartment when it was just like my husband and me. And then when we went on vacation to Europe, we asked my mom to look at her. This was like right after we got engaged, because I told him, I'm not meeting your grandma. We were going to Romania to meet his family. I was like, I'm not meeting your grandma as your girlfriend. And so we were like on our little engagement moon kind of, and she died under my mom's watch. Well, actually it was extra drama, because my mom was dating her now husband and ditched Mittens to go and meet him for a weekend. So she was already feeling super guilty because she had found this awesome cat sitter, and then she died on the cat sitter's watch. And then my mom had to reveal that she like outsourced the care, and it was this whole thing. And yeah, they told either the vet, somebody told me, or I read somewhere that brought me some comfort, that when they love you so much, they will go and hide and or they will make sure that they die not when you're around, because they don't want to die in front of you.
That
or
makes
be
sense.
sick, or yeah.
It's kind of like their way of saving you from the pain of watching them leave.
Yeah. Yeah, even if, like, you had to, it sounded like your partner took him, but they, like, apparently she had some kind of heart disease or condition, and we had no idea. She was 13, 14, I think, but still, we didn't see any signs. And then she was like, oh, you're out of town, it's my time. And I thought I could survive. So my dog, a little bit about like my dog history. I had these 2 dogs growing up. We always needed everybody to have a friend, like a sibling for the pet. So 2 cats, 2 dogs. When I moved from Idaho, because I went to college in Idaho, and back to Seattle after college, I could walk to Green Lake and I saw everybody and their dogs, and I would cry, like missing my animals so much. I wanted an animal. I just have always felt very connected to animals. And so like any chance that I could get to just go down and like experience other people's animals from afar, I would. And now even when my husband complains all the time about our cat scratching everything, I could not live without a pet. So after we inherited Mittens, she immediately fell in love with my husband, even though he was like, I've never had pets growing up. I'm European. We don't do animals in the house. I've even talked to you before of like, you know, he always says no more than 2 non-human heartbeats. He just can't take on more. 2 cats are a lot for him, and they follow him everywhere. We joke because apparently animals know you're in labor, so they'll follow you around and kind of herd you, and they follow him everywhere, so he's always in labor. And if we're like, so when Mittens died, I was like, okay, I'm gonna like, I can handle it. I can like take a break from having a pet. I could not. Like, there was an adoption event at Seattle Humane a month later, and I went and like elbowed all these like tweenie boppers and their parents to get to the front of the line so I could get my free kitten, because my family's super country and we don't believe in paying for animals, for cats. I mean, I paid for dogs. My parents paid multiple hundreds of dollars for our dogs, but for the cats, we're not paying for a cat. So front of the line, first 50 get a free cat. That was me and the like little Microsoft Tweenie Boppers. Like, and the line was down the street. People are passionate about pets, especially when they're free, of course. So I'd love to learn more about like, so you started this company, and you're like, did you have like a vision? What was your job before? Were you just like, this is a completely new territory for me, I'm just going to go for it? Or were you like, okay, I've like had this adoption experience, I know it can be better, and I know I'm the person to do it? Like, what was that process like?
No, so I had 0 experience. Growing up, my family were just not pet people. And so the first thing I did when I moved out was to get a dog, obviously. So I don't even know how I developed this passion, this love for dogs, considering I never had a dog growing up. And I switched industries. I was in hotel management. So I studied hospitality and tourism management. So this was completely new to me. I had to do a lot of research, a lot of studying. I got certified in pet first aid and CPR, just did a lot of courses, you know, talked to people who had been in the industry for a while, met up with founders of other rescues, got tips from them, flew to Houston to meet with people in different rescues, did a tour, an urban and rural tour of shelters in Texas. So it was very eye-opening. And after that whole experience, I knew without a doubt that this was what I wanted to do. This was my calling, in a sense. There hasn't been any other job that I've had that has brought me more satisfaction and happiness than rescuing dogs. I've made lots of great friends in the hospitality industry, and I never say never about going back. There are many things I enjoy about hotel management, but I got to a point in life where I really wanted a work-life balance. And it sounds so cliche, but it was just year after year of giving up holidays, would never be home for Christmas or Thanksgiving. Relationships would take a back seat, and you'd never know when your days off were going to be from one week to the next. My body was really protesting. My health declined. I was working, 14, 16-hour days, 8, 10 consecutive days without a day off, doing shift work, graveyard and morning shifts and PM shifts all over the place. And like, for what? Right. And this was definitely right. And this is definitely what saved me. I think both health wise, both physical and mental health. it just really saved me, which is ironic because people think, like I save dogs, but really the dogs saved me over and over and over again.
Yeah. And you were living in Edmonds, and that's why you have the House of Dogs here?
I was living in Lake Forest Park at the time, and I fell in love with Edmonds because I was born and raised in Singapore, and I lived across from the ocean. And Edmonds is just this beautiful coastal town that reminded me of a neighborhood that I lived in LA as well, Redondo Beach. And I think it was just affirmations that came true, because I remember back then sitting on the bench on Sunset Ave, watching all these people with their dogs, right? Just strolling, enjoying the sunset, looking at the trains go by, and thinking, I really want to live and work in Edmonds. And I just kept saying that I'm going to work in Edmonds. I'm going to live in Edmonds someday. And now I do live and work in Edmonds, and it's an incredible community, a beautiful town, just a lot of heart. And I feel really, really blessed to be a part of the Edmonds community.
Isn't that funny how Edmonds does that to you? Like, I had a lot of magical experiences that led me here too. And I think there's like a difference when you like feel called and led to a place versus like, I guess I did feel that way with Seattle too when I moved there, but like just when it's not your choice. And we moved places growing up based on where my parents' jobs took them. So it was never like a choice of, I want to live here and then I'll find the job. It was always the opposite. The job dictated where we lived. They would choose jobs because they both work for government agencies. So they would choose like the location that was closest to the oldest grandparents at the time. And so they would take turns. But for me, I was like, I'm moving where I want to be and I will figure it out. So I had a similar experience here. And what's interesting to me about Seattle and Edmonds too is the dogs are all really beautiful. I've never seen an ugly dog here.
Yes, people definitely spend a lot of money to make their dogs look really well groomed. I mean, it's amazing. It's really heartening to see how well dogs are taken care of here in Seattle and in Western Washington in general. And just to tack on to what you said, Seattle is the first city that I picked for myself to be my home. Because when I left Los Angeles, it was between Seattle and Nashville, which is, I know, so the complete opposite, right? Nashville is so out there. I visited and I fell in love with the city, and I love country music. I grew up listening to country music, so it felt like home. But I really wanted to stay on the West Coast, and I preferred the weather in Seattle. I love the ferry boats. I love the rain. I'm a rain kind of girl, and I was done with the sunshine in Los Angeles. And I'm so glad that I picked Seattle, because look at what I have now. I just feel really, really blessed. So.
Yeah. And it seems to me too, like a lot of us start in Seattle, and then like for us, we just kept moving a little bit more north. And now we're like, okay, this is where it is. Right. And I don't consider like Edmonds a suburb. Technically, I just consider it like a seaside town, just full of beauty. And it attracts really amazing people. And I always joke too, because like there's a big retirement community here. I'm like, why not just live the retirement life now? Right. I don't know why I have to wait.
Yeah, I know I think sometimes young people are like, well, Edmonds has, like you said, a retiring like community, right? I kind of find comfort in that. I like it. I'm not weirded out by it. I really like it. But I mean, my grandparents raised me, so maybe I'm not weirded out by the elderly. I like it though. It's really the perfect pace for me, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I can't wait to be old here.
Right.
It's going to be great. So tell me about, like, you found this location and you're going to launch this business. And did you have like goals of like, we're going to get X amount of dogs adopted, or just like do our best? And I mean, you can't really measure lives that way, but in order for the business to be sustainable, you have to be thinking of like something. So what was that thought process for you as you were like, okay, I'm going to do this good thing, and then I also have to have some kind of goal around it?
In all honesty, I really kind of winged it. For someone who's so into planning, it really was the scariest thing to me about entrepreneurship, is that you can plan all you want, but you're always going to encounter something that you didn't even think about. And your plan B and plan C is not going to work for it. So there's actually only one other dog cafe in the whole United States. So there are dog-friendly cafes, but there wasn't a dog cafe where you would make a reservation, go in, play with shelter dogs, and adopt if you wanted to, right? And the original dog cafe was located in Los Angeles, and they opened slightly after I moved to Seattle from LA. But I did go back to LA to visit friends, and I did go to the dog cafe, and I had a really amazing time, and they did a really good job. Unfortunately, they did not survive during COVID. But before I opened the Haus of Dogs, I did call them and speak to the founder of the original dog cafe. And she was giving me the rundown, telling me, sharing with me her experience. And it was very daunting and I am really grateful to her for being so blunt, and honest about her experience opening a dog cafe, because she's the pioneer, right? And it was daunting because it wasn't exactly what you want to hear. It's not necessarily a lucrative business, so to speak. But I took what she had to say. I really studied the business concept and the structure. And then I made a few changes to ensure that I wouldn't encounter some of the challenges that she had. So that made it a little easier to have that one blueprint. But in regards to how many dogs I wanted to get adopted or all these goals, I was really just kind of winging it, to be honest. We were getting dogs from Texas, and we have a very different structure than we did back then. So everything that was in my head that I had formulated is no longer even applicable. And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, is that you have to just be all in. You have to just jump in, embrace the challenges, really learn to let go, have faith, and have a plan. Obviously have a solid plan, but at the same time, make room for the unknown and trust that you're going to be able to overcome whatever challenges you encounter.
Yeah. Can you talk to us a little bit about the rescues that you partner with and how that works on your end? Like, in my mind, you're like getting a text of like, we have these 3 dogs. Can you help us get fosters for them so that we can put them on a plane and get them to you? Like, that seems very stressful for me and chaotic. So I'm like, how does she manage these relationships and the communication and getting the dogs here and like the emotion of it all?
Yeah, it takes a village. When I say that, I really do mean it. It takes a village, because you've got boots on the ground in Texas, in New Mexico, in Eastern Washington, and then you communicate with your partners, your partnering rescues and shelters. You're on an email distribution list, and you get emailed all the dogs that are available. You go through a ton of medical records, a ton of behavioral notes. You want to make sure that you, first and foremost, are able to help the dog in question, because you never want to underdeliver, right? You don't want to take on a dog that you cannot help and do more damage than good. So it's a lot of communication, a lot of deadlines, a lot of rushing and anxiety and panicking and, oh my God, are we going to be able to save this dog in time? Are we going to have enough fosters that step up? It's very high pressure. It can be very emotionally and mentally draining, I'll be honest. Every day we get emails about dogs on the euthanasia list. Okay, this dog has 6 hours left. This dog has 12 hours left. These are dogs that are going to be put to sleep at the end of this week. And you can't help all of them, obviously. So I learn to focus on the dogs that I can and have and do help, because if I focused on the ones that I can't, it really would get to me. But it's a lot of coordination, and I'm really blessed to have an amazing team in my village, people who are very ethical, people who are very honest about the dog's temperament, right? So they're not trying to send you a dog that's super aggressive and then lying about the dog being super aggressive. And that's very important, to work with people who are ethical, who really care about the welfare and well-being of the dogs. So I'm very blessed. We work with Friends of Roswell Animals in New Mexico. We work with the Humane Society of Central Texas. We work with various rescues and shelters in San Antonio, Houston, Waco, Kennedy, Texas, private rescues in Amarillo, Texas. And the list is growing. We're working on a partnership with a shelter in Louisiana. So there are just so many different shelters that need help, and we're very blessed to have the relationships that we have and to get the support that we get from them in order to rescue these dogs and transport them from their original state to Washington. And our driver, Kim, is just fantastic. You know that the dogs are in the safest hands when she's there. So.
What does that look like when you're like, okay, do you have certain criteria where you're like, I can save this dog because I have a few days and they have a good temperament and Kim can get there? Like you said, there's so much coordination. So when you're looking through those lists, how do you decide which dogs you can help?
So we take dogs that are spayed or neutered, because it just costs way too much for us to take a dog that's not fixed and then pay for it here. It costs on average about $600-700 for spay or neuter. Low cost spay and neuter clinics exist, but they're booked out for months. And even regular vet clinics, it would take a few weeks at least to get in. And we have a very strict policy of not adopting out dogs that are not fixed, because God forbid, if they get lost, they end up in the wrong hands. They could end up in a backyard breeder situation where they're part of a puppy mill, and we just don't want that for the dogs. So we want to make sure that all the dogs that we adopt out are fixed. We also don't take dogs with a bite history, simply because we don't have a trainer or behaviorist on staff, and we're not going to endanger our clients or our adopters, our fosters, and we don't want the dog to regress and give them a death sentence, because, when a dog bites someone, they could potentially be put to sleep. So we want to avoid that for the dog, and we want to protect the humans that we work with. So I would say those two are the main criteria, that they're fixed and that they don't have a bite history.
I'm really curious about this process. You bring them here, and then you have to vet all these fosters and adoptees or adopters too. So you have all these lists of people that you're managing all the time. The ones that you bring in, you have to know in advance that a foster can take them, right?
Yes, and that's literally why fosters save lives. I think that people hear that tag a lot, but they don't really understand the gravity of the work that fosters do, or the significance of having fosters. And when you foster, you literally save a life, because when you step up and you volunteer to take in this dog when they arrive in Washington, you're basically telling us that we can now rescue the dog because we have placement for the dog. So we can't take in 10 dogs if we only have 5 fosters, because where would we put the other 5? And that's why it's so important to share. I know you're really, really amazing. You've helped us so much by sharing our posts, because even if you can't foster yourself, you're sharing it, and someone in your social circle might be able to foster. And we really need fosters. I can't emphasize that enough. We need fosters. And we obviously have to coordinate with the transport dates. So our transport company, Kim, she'll tell us, okay, this is when we're coming in October, this is when we're coming in November. And then we work with the shelter and say, okay, this is the day that our transport bus is leaving. We're hoping to get these dogs on that bus if they're not already tagged by another rescue. So it's a lot of transport coordination with the vet clinic to make sure that they get their health certificates, to make sure they have all their shots that they need, to make sure they have their flea tick prevention and they're not spreading anything on the bus to other dogs. It's a lot of coordination. But again, the people that I work with are so fantastic that they make the job a million times easier. And I'm so blessed to have the relationships that I have with them.
What is Kim's capacity? Like, is this a monthly thing, or you try to have it be monthly, but sometimes like natural disasters make it so that you have more rescues? I've seen that sometimes they come on planes.
Yes. So sometimes they come on planes. For the most part, we use, from Texas, we use Kim's company. Her company is called Haus Crusaders. And she comes here a few times a month. She has this gigantic yellow school bus that she converted into a transport bus for the dogs, and it's amazing. She also has a smaller van for smaller intakes. So she comes here about 3 times a month, I would say. And I think the bus can fit, I want to say like at least 40 dogs. It all just depends on the sizes of the dogs that are coming, because if they're in a larger crate, the crate takes up more room, and then you end up having to take less dogs. But it's a really huge multi-state operation that's just it's fantastic because it brings people together, because she'll have volunteers in Colorado, 30 people showing up to help walk the dogs, feed the dogs, take them out for a potty break before they resume their journey. And there are always 2 drivers on board the bus. It's a 2-day trip from Texas to Washington, and they make stops along the way. They drop off dogs for rescues and private adopters in Oregon and Washington, amongst other states. And it's just a very fantastic operation that she's got going. So.
Wow. Yeah. I can't even wrap my mind around all of it. That's amazing how much you all do. And so one of the things too is that you have these dogs coming, you have the fosters lined up. What's the roadmap from between foster to adopt, or like you have a separate pool of fosters? Do they get like tagged as like potential adoption families, or is it one or the other? What does that look like?
So some of our fosters choose to foster because they're interested in adopting. They just want to get to know different dogs, different breeds, different size dogs, to really figure out what is right for their family, what's right for their lifestyle. And that's a beautiful way of doing that, because you're saving lives, but you're also learning about what you want in a dog and what you can do for the dog. Some people realize they're too busy, and foster helps them realize that. Some people realize they travel too much for work, so they're not able to be full-time dog owner. So they foster, so they still get to spend time with dogs, but not have that full-time commitment to being a dog owner. And sometimes we get people who really just want to foster. So they're just ongoing fosters. Our fosters usually have the dogs for about 2 weeks. It's never more than a month. Our dogs do get adopted pretty quickly, and they love that. So they'll foster for 2 weeks out of a month, and then they get a 2-week break, and then they start again the following month. So it's a nice cycle that they've got going. So it really just depends on why you get into fostering. But we do prioritize our fosters. So if they decide they want to adopt the dog, they do get priority over any of the other adoption applications that we've received, because the dog's already in their home. The dog's already comfortable in their home, and they already know the pros and cons of that dog, the good habits, the bad habits. So it's beneficial for the dog to remain in that environment and have one less stressful transition into a new environment, meeting new people. So that's another plus of fostering.
And you mentioned too before we started recording about mental health. I imagine that there's a lot of like mental health support that these dogs give to their families, which is, you know, something that's probably in the back of your mind, but not really like part of the intake process. Are you saying that this was great for your mental health too, to start? I mean, it sounded like your last job was pretty intense and affected like mind, body, soul. But beyond that, there's probably different layers of mental health within this company for you.
Absolutely. It has done wonders for my physical and mental health. Dogs are just so therapeutic for me. And I think in general, a lot of people find dogs to be very therapeutic. You don't have to deal with the office politics and all the red tape and, you know, all of the office drama that you kind of would have to deal with in an office setting. And it's just fantastic. It's just really, really therapeutic for me. I get anxiety sometimes, and nothing takes care of it faster and better than going on a walk with a dog. Just connecting with the dog and just having that silence, you know, putting on some podcast, the Coast podcast, or some Gary Vee business podcast, or even just guided meditations, you know, and listening to something that's soothing to you, being active, being out in nature with a dog. It's just amazing. And I don't doubt that our fosters get to enjoy that as well.
Yeah, animals are so, I mean, we all know intellectually, but even my husband, like, I think that he, in spite of the scratching the furniture and the puking and the hair that he complains about all the time, I'm like, but the motor, you have to admit that the motor on your body, like I've been in some of these club or like masterminds lately where they're like, imagine your like ideal day, or like, what a perfect, like, you know, visualize into, channel this perfect day for you. And I'm like on the couch with a big Pendleton blanket because they're so heavy. They feel so good. A cat on, it doesn't matter if it's summer. I'm going to make that very clear. Like, I don't care how hot it is outside. Blanket on the legs, cat on the blanket, or a dog. I just have cats right now. But the benefit of a cat to me too is the purring. Because I just love their little motors going, and it really like affects, especially if they come and they crawl all the way up to my chest, the kind of nervous system things that they can do to you just by like calibrating your breathing together and their little motors going while I have a book in my hand. It's just like, that is one of my paradises. And I don't care if other people feel the same way. Weight on the legs, motor on. If dogs had motors, it would be like all over for me.
Yeah, I mean, and they don't judge you, right? You could be in your pajamas, you could be having a bad hair day, you could be not so lovable that day, you could be in a terrible mood, and they would still just love the heck out of you. And I think that's really important, especially, you know, during COVID, when you're isolated from people and you're at home, and if you live alone, I think it's what kept me sane during quarantine, I would say. You're just having companionship, just having that unconditional love, just having something to get you out of bed and prevent you from wallowing in your depression, wondering what's going to happen to the world, right? Like, no one expected to live through a global pandemic, and not our generation, I don't think. Because you're thinking all these advances in the medical world, there's no way we would live through a pandemic. And then we did. and people started adopting dogs like crazy. And there's a reason why.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah. Because dogs are just that magical creature that loves you no matter what, and is so loyal. And you come home and they act like you've been gone for years, and they kiss you all over and lick you and wag their tail. It's just infectious. Their love, the extent and the level at which they love is just so admirable and pure. And I think they're magical. I really do.
I agree. Then you're closed. So you're closed for 9 months, and then you open to what, like a line out your door, like at Seattle Humane for the free kittens?
I wish. No, well, I had to start out slow because when we closed, I went back into hotel management, and that's how the Haus dogs survived, really. Because I had to go back to hotel management, and it enabled me to keep and hold on to the facility that we have in Fairdale Village. And there are many people who are like, yeah, well, you gave it a shot. There's no shame in shutting down completely. Who knows what the future holds. You should just close, permanently. And I'm like, no, like, this is my dream. Are you kidding me? Like, it took me a year to set this up. I'm not going to just give up because of a global pandemic. So I'm glad
Facts.
I held on.
Yeah.
But
don't you love how everybody else knows how to manage your life?
I mean, sometimes they give great advice, right? But I think at the end of the day, you need to know what's right for you. And I just knew in my heart, I mean, just going through all of the challenges during COVID as a small business, and we didn't qualify for any of the funds or assistance because we had only been open for 3 months, and you had to have been open for a minimum of a year to qualify for assistance. And so all that added challenge and all the obstacles that we encountered, it just even more so made me realize how badly I wanted this to work and how important this is to me. So when we reopened in December of 2020, I had to start out small because I still had the hotel management job. I was working crazy hours, and I didn't want to take on too much and fail. So I remember the first dog that I took in when we reopened is a German Shepherd named Tinsel. And Tinsel came from Yakima Humane Society, and they told me that she was incredibly fearful of people. And I said, okay, well, I want to meet her in person. So I drove 3 hours to Yakima Humane Society, and they had set up blankets in her kennel because I really kind of just wanted to sit in her kennel with her. So I sat and I laid down on this blanket on this concrete floor, right? And she was just in the corner, just shivering and shaking. And I kind of just ignored her, and I just put on some classical music because someone had told me that classical music is really soothing for dogs. And I just hung out in the kennel for like an hour, and soon enough she kind of started to nuzzle against me and kind of like lay down next to me and let her guard down. And then we started playing with a ball, and she started taking treats from my hand. And so by the end of that visit, I was like, yes, I have to take Tinsel home with me and spend more time with her and socialize her. And I knew that my dogs would help get her out of her shell. And I worked with her for about a month before I felt like she was ready to meet with people. And we found her a wonderful family, and she was actually brought home, I think, Christmas Eve. That was my goal, to find her a home by Christmas. And it was really awesome to see her go home with this amazing family that understood her needs, understood her challenges, and was willing to take that on. I would say it was the best Christmas present I ever gave myself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's the one breed that we always look at. My uncle had a German Shepherd who lived forever named Jack, and my husband was really into him. I've told you this before, I think, on DMs. Whenever I see one of the German Shepherds, I'm like, like, how do I resist this? Oh, because he told me one day it's just going to be in the backyard. But the German Shepherds, the one hesitation for me is the shedding, because I've spent a lot of years with a lot of hair. And it's not a total...
the shedding, and then they're very active dogs. They're very intelligent. They need that stimulation, that engagement, that exercise. So it's definitely one of the more high maintenance dogs to have. I personally don't think I could have a German Shepherd. I don't think that I'd be able to give him what he needs. But I mean, they're beautiful, intelligent creatures. They really are. They're just so regal. And there's a reason why they're in, military canine dogs too.
Yeah. How do you resist them? How do you resist every dog?
It's an occupational hazard. But I think I'm doing pretty well because 3 years in and I've only had one dog that I adopted for myself. So we're doing pretty good. So yeah, it's a good thing we don't live in a house with a yard because then I'd have more dogs, but being in an apartment, that limits me a little bit. So it keeps me in check. That's good.
Yeah. That's like me where the consignment shop up the street, I try to shop only with my credit. Yeah. That doesn't always work out for me, but mostly it's like, okay, this is my limit. Same with like Nordstrom. I don't have the credit card. I have the debit card. Only have so much money in the bank account. So we got to put those boundaries up for ourselves. I just posted on Instagram today about my boundaries because everybody's like, do this for me. I don't know what energy is in the air. Well, it is full moon. So we're recording this on a full moon and everybody's like, do this for my business. And I'm like, I do a lot of things for all people's businesses all the time. Like, thank you for asking me. If I say no, I mean no. And I appreciate that you asked me, but please don't follow up on this because I'm not going to take it on right now. And you probably have to manage that a lot too of like, I can't take this on and like calibrating that like in your body and standing in it of like, I have feelings around this, but I gotta like stay strong.
Yes, I struggle with boundaries a lot because I can't tell you how many texts, how many calls I get, voice messages left for me. Oh, I can't keep my dog anymore, or I just lost my home, and it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking because you want to save all of these dogs, you want to help all of these humans. It's terrible the situation that they're in. Either they've lost their home or they've lost their job, and you want to help so bad. But I've really had to sort of put my foot down and really remind myself, okay, I can't do more than what I'm doing right now. So boundaries are something I struggle with, but it's very, very, very essential to have boundaries, I think, especially in the line of work that we do, where people are just like, help. And you can't. Yeah.
Ugh, it's a lot. I want to ask you our not so rapid fires that we ask everybody, and I'm really eager to hear your answers to these. What are you proudest of in your business right now?
Oh my gosh, I'm proudest of how many people whose lives I've touched because they now have their new best fur friend. Because when I got into this business, I was focused solely on the dogs, but seeing the impact it has on people is just tremendous. It's like the added bonus that comes with the job. Just seeing how happy these kids are that they're now going home with a puppy, or seeing this family who just lost their dog and they're still grieving, but they're now open to homing another dog. It's these stories that you get to know when you meet different people that you get to be a part of, and that's really such a huge joy for me.
Yeah. And do they do a good job, some of them, half of them, of following up and and I see sometimes you post like the happy gotcha day like a year later sort of stuff.
Yes. Yeah, we get lots of pup dates. We call them pup dates. And I love seeing all of the photos that they send me of these dogs living their best lives. And when you think about how they started out being a street dog or being in a very abusive, situation, and now they're living their amazing life in Washington, it keeps you going. It really does, especially on the difficult days.
Yeah,
it does.
And I swear we are a special breed of human over here of how dogs are treated. Like, I don't know if you know Richard Taylor. He's been on the podcast. He's a big Edmonds influencer. He just got a puppy. That dog smelled as good as he did. He's like, and his name is King Kona, and he has his own special non-toxic jasmine blossom, I think, was the shampoo smell.
I believe it. Yes.
Yeah.
We take our dogs very seriously.
Yeah. He's like, he's my son. Look at the pea coat I ordered for him to match me for the holidays. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's great, right? And I think it definitely varies in different states. I think some states they have a culture of adopting a dog to be a working dog or a guard dog. It's very for pragmatic reasons. And I think in Western Washington, especially in Edmonds and like North Seattle, at least, it is just mostly for companionship, just to spoil the heck out of them. And they're our kids. They really are. We take them everywhere, and sometimes they eat better than us. They they have all of those like limited ingredients, non-GMO, and we don't think twice before we put something in our mouth, but we definitely read the labels and ingredient list before we feed our dogs. And I think that's fantastic. That's amazing.
Yeah, we have friends who live, I don't know if they still do this, but they live in New Jersey, and they have 2 little cockapoos or something like that. And they would go to Costco every week. They were very into the rotisserie chickens there, and the dog would get his own chicken, and they would get a chicken. It's like,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
My husband had a coworker who he was Jewish, and he had bark mitzvahs for his dogs. That's incredible.
I have to steal that, a bark mitzvah.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I have lots of stories I could share.
Kind of reminds me of like in LA too, because people, they have expensive $1,000 strollers, and you peek into the stroller and you're expecting a child, and it's a dog. And it's a thing, and they dress up their dogs, and they have barkeries. They call them barkeries. I mean, we have barkeries here too, but I mean, it's a whole multi-billion-dollar industry, I would say.
Yeah, you need to get on that swag. Everybody needs to have like the mommy and me T-shirts that say House of Dogs.
Yeah, definitely. That's an idea for sure.
Tell us about a book you read or a podcast you listened to recently that changed the way you're thinking about your life or your business.
Ooh, man, that's a tough one. Okay, I'm still working my way through it because I'm such a slow reader. But there's this book written by Simu Liu. He's Marvel's first Asian superhero. He was Shang-Chi, and it was really interesting for me to read his novel because I knew he grew up in Canada, but I didn't know about his background in Asia and his family and all that. And just reading that sort of like immigrant story and how he left, his former job and switched industries and pursued his passion, that really resonated with me. Because, the stereotypical Asian family is like, well, if you're not an attorney, you're not a doctor, you're not an engineer, you're a failure, right? And for me to be like a dog rescuer, like, what is that, right? You're not, you're just not, but it really resonated, and it kind of reaffirmed what I'm doing with my life, with my business, and to just follow my heart and to do what's right for me, to honor where I come from, to honor my Asian heritage, to respect the culture and the traditions, but also be brave enough to sort of make my own path and be a trailblazer in my own right, and stay true to who I am. So that definitely made me feel a lot better about what I'm doing, because I still have moments when I'm like, am I doing something that makes my family proud? Because that's very important to me. We grew up in a very close-knit family, and you always want to make your parents proud, right? And being a business owner is it's not very stable. Business fluctuates, and I know my grandparents used to say, why can't you just get a stable 9-to-5 job? Because to them, that's what's great, having all those benefits and stability. And I just had to be the rebel. But the book really helped me. It made me feel better about what I'm doing. So, yep.
And if you want to feel even better about what you're doing, and if you're into meditation, you mentioned you are, the Vishen's latest book, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, the founder of Mind Valley, his latest book is about going into depth on his 6-stage meditation practice. And he has like a multi-billion-dollar company, but originally he's Malaysian, and his family was like, when they discovered, oh, Bill Gates, he does computers, you should go work for Bill Gates. He started his career working for Bill Gates, and he was miserable. He lasted at Microsoft like 2 months. And then he had this like, he just quit and was trying to figure it out, had this like mind-blowing meditation experience through like Googling, how do I be happy or something. And this meditation seminar in LA popped up. He went to it. He was the only one there. He got like a 1-to-1 training, and it completely changed his life. And now he runs this huge company and is a best-selling author. And he didn't tell me yet if his family is proud, but I imagine because he makes good money that they're probably proud.
Yeah. He's living his best life, and I think parents at the end of the day, they want to see their kids happy, and
But he had that same line
yeah,
about the lawyer, doctor, engineer
right,
thing.
yeah. I think I'm lucky because my dad is a businessman, and so I think he's happy that I kind of followed in his footsteps because I'm the only child that is really into business. My brother and my sister aren't so into business, but yeah, I think parents just want their kids to be happy.
For sure. What would your last meal be?
Ooh, something seafood. It would have to be seafood. I have a serious addiction to seafood. I could practically be a fixture at the market in Edmonds. That's like my go-to for seafood.
Have you been to Kuzma's?
I am not.
You have to go to Kuzma's.
Okay, I will. That's on my to-do list.
Yeah, I was just talking about it yesterday too. It's right behind Jack in the Box up for anybody who's local. It's the former fishmonger at Uwajimaya, which is a big Japanese grocery store in the Seattle area, but they also have one in Oregon and a couple other locations, I think. And he was the fishmonger there. He started his own place, and that is Kuzma's. And it's like this kind of industrial looking, like just big garage that they open, and it's full of like fresh lobsters, oysters. They have poke. They have everything. A big, big fish counter. It's awesome.
Hey, that's what I'm doing this weekend.
Yeah, and he's super knowledgeable too. Like my husband's a big cook, and we actually inspired by one that we had purchased that I got for Father's Day a few years ago from Bar Dojo. We had a fish boil from them that they did as like a Father's Day promotion, and then he got inspired and wanted to do his own, or a seafood boil. And so we went to Kuzma's and got like the little crawdads and fun stuff to put in our own, and they just, you can really trust them there, and they're awesome. That's
great. I'm excited.
Hopefully it's not your last meal. You get to go to Kuzma's a bunch of times, but
right? Yeah.
What's the best purchase you've made for your business in the last 6 months under $100?
Ooh. Can I say what someone got for us?
Sure.
Okay, so Jillian, the sales manager at the Best Western Plus Harbor Inn in Edmonds, she's such a sweetheart.
I'm meeting with her in 30 minutes.
I love her. Okay, so you have to tell her I said this. Shout out, Jillian. I love you. She was so sweet. She bought for us these leashes, these bright yellow leashes with the words "Adopt Me" on them. And it's really helped because I give them to the fosters. They take the dog out and people see the "Adopt Me" on the leashes. And it's such a simple yet effective way to kind of let people know that the dog is in need of a home.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I need to do something with her soon.
Yeah, especially like I'm thinking of Trudy when we were hanging out with Sam's foster, Trudy. Everybody was already wanting to know Trudy. They didn't even know she was available for adoption. So that was one of the first things Sam always said was she's available for adoption. And that would start the conversation even sooner with a leash like that. For somebody like Trudy, she was super magnetic and the cutest thing. I love that. I'll definitely tell Jillian. Last question. What is lighting you up lately?
what is lighting me up lately? Therapy.
Amazing. I love that. Same. In so many forms. Yeah.
I don't know if this is like too much information, but I have a personal therapy session weekly. And I also do couples therapy with my boyfriend, and it's been great. Like, I think a lot of people feel like people who go to therapy they're in trouble or whatever, but for us it's maintenance. It's really great, and I think the key is to not wait until you feel like you need it before you go get help. But it's tremendous because I do a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's helped with my anxiety. It's helped make me more self-aware. I'm getting to know myself better and like my triggers, and paying more attention to sleep, paying more attention to what I eat, being more active, just looking after yourself, which in turn spills into your business, your career, your relationships. Definitely therapy.
I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I'll just say it again. And for your benefit, I tricked my husband into going to couples therapy when we were engaged. Because a lot of people go, like, they do a few sessions with, like, a priest or a preacher, however they define their spirituality, and that's, like, part of the process. But for me, I was like, no, like, we're focusing on the relationship. We're going to find, like, a couples therapist to, like, put us on the right path. And then we kept going for, like, the next couple years because I was like, let's just hold this and give it to Joe for when we meet with Joe again. And I miss Joe. We talk about him sometimes and we need to check in with him. And I love it. Like, obviously I am a personal development junkie. So I don't think there's anything wrong with like wanting to grow. I think that's what we're here to do, like grow and evolve and be our best selves. And so to have a partner who's willing to be on that path with you and doesn't have any like male ego about like being broken or weird or wrong is incredible. And I think everybody should be in therapy all the time.
Yeah. And I'm actually really blessed because he was the one that turned me onto it, because he's so big on meditation and spirituality, and he's so good at communicating and expressing his emotions, which is funny because he's in the military. So it's not the stereotypical military guy that you would think of, right? Because they usually don't like to talk about their emotions, but he's so good at it. And he was like adamant. He's like, no, if you have anxiety, like, we're doing this together. We need to do this. And I love it. I've come to love it, and I've come to see the benefits and how important it is. And yeah, I'm loving life. So I'm really grateful that he did that for me.
Snaps to him. Now I want to interview him next. He sounds incredible. How can everybody find you and apply to be a foster or an adopter or just participate and know what you're doing? And how can they support you?
So they can support us by sharing our posts, being a foster, being an adopter. They can find out more information on our website, thehouseofdogs.com. And we're also on Instagram and Facebook as the Haus of Dogs, and we have pictures that we upload of our dogs that are available. And I think the one thing that I kind of want to say before we wrap up is that we really take pride in being an inclusive rescue. So we don't penalize someone for being a renter instead of a homeowner. We don't penalize someone for being in an apartment instead of a home with a fenced yard. I think that there is a right dog for every home that has a responsible, loving owner. And we're excited to help people find the right dog for them, for their lifestyle, for their household, for what they're looking for. It's the one thing that people always ask me, well, I'm in an apartment, am I disqualified? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? And I'm probably not going to give you a German Shepherd or a Husky, but, there are many amazing dogs that would belong in an apartment, that would thrive in an apartment. So I think that's very important for people to know about the House of Dogs, is that we are very inclusive in that way.
Yeah, I love that. And you still have your GoFundMe on your website too, if people are like not in a position to foster or adopt, and they can just like send money and support the business.
Yeah, absolutely. GoFundMe is on our website as well.
And I wanted to also at Workhorse do some kind of food or towel drive for you as well.
Yeah,
so there are different things that people can do, like including like Jillian, she had a whole pop-up at the Best Western, and I think it seems like you're pretty open to different ways people like come to you being like, can I help you in this way?
Yes, absolutely. We appreciate all the help that we can get. We love meeting with people in the community. We loved our adoption event at Workhorse and at Walnut Street Coffee and the Best Western. Recently, we did a couple events at a private pop-up, and we got to meet more people, more residents. So, yeah, we're open. We're open for help, and we love meeting new people. And just send us an email or shoot us a text, and we'll go from there.
One day we'll get my mom her boat dog.
We'll
work together on that.
Yeah.
Manifest
Instagram
it.
goal.
Right? Yeah, except I have to take the photos because she's... well, that's another conversation for another day. Thank you so much, Aishah. Everybody go follow the House of Dogs. Find them online and hit me up if you have any questions, or Aishah too. You're blazingly fast to respond on Instagram, especially. That's where I contact you the most. And thank you for listening to this episode of The Coast. We will see you with our next interview. Bye. This episode's music was provided by Sloan Best.
And editing provided by Kayla Shu.